Hi guys, welcome to my kitchen. So it is sweater weather, and that means that it's chili season. And while I'm sure that you do not need another chili recipe, what you probably need is a really good cornbread recipe. So today I'm going to show you the one and only cornbread that I like to make. I actually had quite a hard time finding a cornbread recipe that I liked because, as you probably know, there's a big controversy out there over savory versus sweet cornbread, if you're going to have corn in it. So there's a ton of recipes out there, and it's hard to find just that perfect, for me, middle ground. So this is the recipe that I use. Hopefully you try it and like it, and if you don't, well, that's okay too. So I'm going to go over what our ingredients are here first of all. So we have a cup of flour and 3/4 cup of cornmeal. Spoiler alert, they get mixed together. And in this one here, I've got 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of baking powder here. I have 8 tablespoons, which is 1/2 cup of butter. However, this is important, I have a tablespoon of butter that is just solid butter, and then I've melted the rest of that. So that's going to be important later. I've also got a 1/4 cup of canola oil, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/2 cup of honey, 2 eggs, and 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. So that is going to be our mix. So to start off with, we'll do the easy stuff, which is to add all of the dry ingredients in and get those incorporated really well. The sugar, even though you might think it's a dry ingredient, that goes in with all of the wet ingredients, which is fairly common with baking, but you don't want to put that in this mix that you're doing here. But if you do, it wouldn't be the end of the world, so it's okay. Alright, so that is pretty well mixed up there. Now I have my melted butter. I'm going to add my canola oil in there. You could also use corn oil or vegetable oil if you would like. And then my honey. Now a little trick for the honey is if you have a cooking spray handy, just your regular average like Pam or any kind of cooking spray that you use, if you spray trying to make sure I get all of it here. If you spray out your little measuring cup beforehand, it will help it to release a little bit easier. I'm going to give this a good mix. I just like doing it with a fork. It's a little bit less fussy to me than a whisk. I love my whisk for some things, but this is just one of those things that I just like to whip up with a fork. And I'm also going to add in my sugar in this step as well. Sugar goes in there. And you just want to make sure that this is incorporated real good. It's going to be kind of almost like a slushy texture, sort of, because of the sugar in there. Getting the butter incorporated is what takes a little bit of time. Okay, so you can see that there, the consistency. Now we're going to add our eggs in. This is a good step to really make sure everything is mixed in really well, because you've probably heard that you don't want to overmix things. And so really when it gets important about not over mixing is when you're adding your wet ingredients to your dry. So before you get to that point, you want to make sure that all of your ingredients are really incorporated really well. So that's why you always want to make sure that your dry ingredients are really well incorporated and all of your wet ingredients, so that when you put them together, then you can just bring them just together without over mixing, because then if you over mix it, it messes with the texture and it makes it not as nice. So We want our cornbread to be nice. Now the part that I didn't tell you is my oven is preheating to 375 degrees. And I have a little surprise in there that I'm going to show you once I get everything incorporated here. And that's really the special part about this cornbread mix. It's my favorite part of it. So now that I've got that mixed in well, I'm going to start mixing in my dry. I'm going to do this in 2 batches of the dry mix, just so that I have a little bit more control over it. Now you're going to get some lumps. It's fine. You just don't want it to be super lumpy, but some lumps are completely fine and expected. So we're just going to fold everything in. This is always the part, for me at least, where I get tempted to just whisk it up really, really fast. But that's the part where it's dangerous that you can overmix it. So if you're going to have patience anywhere, have patience during this step. So now you can kind of see it is a little bit lumpy, but all of the lumps are fairly small. So when you have a batter that says it can be lumpy, that's what you want. You want small lumps as opposed to really big lumps, because the big lumps are where you're going to get like a pocket of flour or corn flour, and that's not really that tasty. So we're going to call that good and set that right there. This is where my extra tablespoon of butter is going to come in handy. So in my oven, I have my cast iron skillet. And here is what I did with that. So as soon as we set the oven to preheat, I put the cast iron skillet in there. So it's heating up at the same time and at the same temperature as the oven. So it is essentially the oven right now. You want to be very, very careful when you're getting this out. When you're handling this, make sure that you have either a silicone sleeve that you can slip on here or an oven mitt, because otherwise you will burn yourself. So take your butter on the end of a fork like this. Look at that sizzle. Look at that. Doesn't that look good? Nice thing about doing this with a fork as opposed to like a knife or a pair of tongs, the fork kind of hangs onto it all the way around like that. So there's that, and then we're gonna pour in our cornbread mix. And you can already kind of guess what's going to happen here, because that pan is so hot. Like, there's literally steam coming off of it right here. And you can already see around the edges the brown butter from just putting that butter on there. What's going to happen is, as this cooks, because of course we're putting it back in the oven, it's going to be in there for about 40 minutes. As this cooks, it is going to just puff up, but the bottom is going to get this gorgeous like golden brown crust, and that's really what I think makes this special, because it's not just your average cornbread. You can take this recipe and put it just in a regular pan if you want to, or if you don't have a cast iron, but this is just so spectacular, especially if you're serving it like to a group of friends for a chili supper or something like that. The presentation on it is just so fun. So hang tight. We're going to go ahead and bake this guy, and then once he's done, we'll take it out and see what it looks like. Okay guys, we are ready to get out our cornbread. Back that up. Okay. So that is all nice and golden brown all the way around there. Firm in the middle. really, really hot. You can still actually hear it sizzling a little bit. That is going to be so delicious with some warm butter on top of it. You can drizzle it with honey if you like that. So hopefully you try this recipe with your cast iron and like it. Bye.